You're standing on the platform with your phone in your hand. It is morning, or close enough to morning, and everyone around you has the slightly unfinished look of people being carried into the day before they have fully agreed to it. Someone is checking a message. Someone is holding a coffee too carefully. Someone has one earphone in and one ear still half in the station, listening for the announcement they hope they will not need. Your own screen is doing several quiet jobs at once. It tells you how many minutes until the train arrives. It tells you whether the line is running normally, which is one of those phrases that always sounds more reassuring than it feels. It shows a small map, perhaps, or a live update, or a delay alert that has already been softened into something manageable. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, a revised arrival, a platform change. And in your ears there is another layer. Music, a podcast, a voice you chose, or just noise cancelling, which is a strange modern luxury, not adding something exactly, but taking the world down a notch. The station is still there. The people are still there. The train will still arrive in its own time. But a small private bubble has formed around you, made out of glass, sound, battery life, and the mild authority of an app. It is easy to think this is simply what commuting is. You wait, you check, you move, you arrive. But a lot is being held in place for you. Take away the phone. Take away the earphones. Take away the live updates, the private sound, the little moving dot that tells you where you are in relation to the next part of the day. The platform does not disappear. It becomes something else. So remove them slowly. First, the phone goes. No screen in your hand. No alert sliding down from the top. No last-minute permission to relax because the train is still 6 stops away. Then the earphones go. The private soundtrack stops. The voice you chose is gone. And the station's own voice comes back. Shoes on hard floor, metal somewhere beyond the platform, a cough, a newspaper being folded, a train you cannot yet see but can already feel entering the building. There is no noise cancelling, no clean little capsule of chosen sound around your head, no app converting uncertainty into a number, no message to send if you are late, at least not instantly, not from the platform, not with your thumb. Let the station change under that absence. The light warms and yellows. The pillars become iron. The platform fills with hats and coats, with people dressed for offices that will expect them at a certain hour. A man checks a pocket watch, then looks up at the station clock, as if comparing two authorities that ought to agree. Around him, the crowd is not antique or charming. It is just a crowd, compressed by the same ordinary question that still compresses people every morning. When is the train coming? And will I get on it? This is New York in the 1920s, but not as a postcard. Not the city as skyline, glamour, theatre lights, and fast-talking myth. The city here is a platform, a carriage, a repeated morning pressure. A place where the day has to be entered through a public machine. You might think you are only waiting for the next train, but even the person waiting here is not quite the same kind of person yet. The word you would use now, commuter, did not begin as a simple description of someone moving through space. Before you were moving, you were a ticket. This is one of the small oddities hidden inside a very ordinary word. A commuter sounds, to us, like a natural category of person, a person who lives in one place and works in another, a person who gets up, travels in, travels back, and complains about it with the weary fluency of someone performing a public duty. The word feels as if it belongs to the body, the standing, the walking, the waiting, the half-run down the stairs when the train is already there. But one older use of the word sat closer to a ticket office than to a map. In railway life, a commutation ticket helped make regular travel visible as a routine. It was part of the practical world of repeated fares and repeated passages, a piece of paper or card that turned the same journey, taken again and again, into something recognizable. The commuter, before becoming the familiar figure with a bag and a schedule and a tired morning face, was not only a traveller. He was also a repeated morning pattern made visible by a ticket. There is something wonderfully dry about that. Before the city knew you as a person caught between home and work, it knew you as a regular passage, a morning return, a body attached to a recurring piece of cardboard. You can picture the conductor moving through the carriage, hand braced as the train shifts beneath him, punching a small mark into the ticket. Not a grand, historical moment. No one in the carriage pauses to recognize the invention of a new way of living. The punch is just a sound inside the morning. Click, move on. Click, move on. But that little card matters because it turns a journey into a rhythm. It says, this is not a one-off trip. This is not travel in the old sense of setting out. This is a life arrangement. The ticket bought more than distance. It placed you every day into a repeated physical condition, and that condition had a body. Put one hand up, not metaphorically. Put it above your head, where one of the old leather straps hangs from the rail, worn darker by other hands before yours. You grip it because the carriage is already moving, and because there is nowhere else for your body to go. This is where the old commute loses any pleasant sepia tint. A train carriage in a city like 1920s New York was not a calm wooden room drifting politely through the morning. It could be close, loud, unsteady, and full of other people's weight. People stood shoulder to shoulder, leaning without meaning to, correcting themselves as the train lurched, then being moved again before the correction was complete. The word strap-hanger is almost too neat for the body it describes. It sounds like a type, a civic figure, perhaps even a cartoon. But before it was anything like that, it was simply a hand, raised and gripping. A wrist taking the pull when the carriage braked. A shoulder tightening because the body had to stay upright while the floor made small decisions of its own. If you were lucky enough to sit, the seat might be woven rattan, durable and practical, with a texture you would feel through the morning's clothes. When the train slowed, you might slide a little before catching yourself. Around you, hats dipped, elbows adjusted, knees guarded their tiny territories. Someone's newspaper pressed too close. Someone's coat brushed yours. Everyone knew, without needing to say it, that a crowded carriage turns the body into a negotiation. And then there was the sound. Not a measured figure, not a neat comparison. Just the hard fact of a carriage that did not make quiet easy. Windows might be open because there was no air conditioning in the way you would expect now. Metal against metal. The open window roar of the train and the city folding together. A smell might carry steel dust, warm machinery, and a sharp electric tang people might describe as ozone. Though what matters here is simpler. The train had a smell of its own. This was not a more peaceful commute. People were already complaining about the crush, the indignity, the way the morning could press itself against you before work had even begun. The day did not start at the office. It started here, with your hand on the strap, and your body learning the route before your mind had quite caught up. And over all of this, there was the clock. Not the soft, adjustable clock you carry now, the one that updates itself silently, changes time zones without asking, and tells you with oddly intimate confidence that you still have 4 minutes. The station clock was different. It was public. It was high enough for everyone to see. It did not refresh itself into kindness. You looked at it the way people look at something that has the power to make a small morning go wrong. A printed timetable could tell you the pattern of the day. but it could not bend toward you once you were late. A pocket watch could be checked and checked again, but checking did not change what the clock above the platform was saying. The whole arrangement made time feel less like a stream of updates and more like a hard object fixed to the wall. Today, a delay is often translated before it reaches you. It becomes an estimate, an alert, a different route, a message you can send while still standing still. That is not happiness exactly, but it is a kind of control. On the older platform, missing the train had a more physical finality, not because people were more punctual or more disciplined or morally better at mornings, simply because the information around them was thinner and harder. The next possibility was printed somewhere. The clock told you where you stood in relation to it. The gap between one train and the next was not a little grey block on a screen. It was the platform under your feet. So you watched the clock, then you watched the crowd, then you watched the track. And after a while, in a carriage full of strangers, the question became not only when you would arrive, it became where to put your eyes until you did. This is where the newspaper enters. A broadsheet newspaper folded in a crowded carriage is not a small object. It has corners, it has wings. It wants space the carriage does not really have. To open one properly, you need a tiny choreography. Lift without hitting the person beside you, fold the upper half down, narrow the page, turn it inwards, keep the elbows civil. Done badly, it is a nuisance. Done well, it is almost a room. The paper gives the hand something to do. This matters more than it sounds. In a crowded public space, idle hands become awkward very quickly. Where do they go? On your lap, if you are sitting. Around a strap, if you are standing. Into pockets, if you have the space. The newspaper solves the problem by making the hands busy and respectable. You are not fidgeting, you are reading. It gives the face somewhere to go as well. The face is the real problem in a carriage. A body can be close to another body by necessity. A shoulder can brush a sleeve without meaning anything. But eyes are different. Eyes ask questions, even when they are trying not to. They make contact too easily. They create a little spark of social obligation where nobody has room for it. So the newspaper rises. It blocks a line of sight. It softens the stranger opposite into a pair of shoes below the page, a hat above it, a presence without a demand. It tells the carriage, I am occupied. I am here, but not available. I acknowledge the public space by behaving correctly inside it, and I protect myself from it by placing this folded world between my face and yours. That is not the same as saying the newspaper was a phone. It was not. The paper did not glow, did not send anything, did not offer a private universe in your palm. But it did one quiet public job very well. It made a boundary that everyone could politely understand. A rectangle can be surprisingly powerful in public. What looks like reading is also sheltering. What looks like information is also posture. The paper holds the eyes, steadies the hands, and gives the body permission not to be socially open every second it is physically exposed. This is easy to miss because privacy often looks like nothing from the outside. A folded paper, a lowered face, a thumb moving on a screen. But in the small theatre of the commute, these objects do serious work. They help a person remain a person, not simply one more body pressed into the morning, and once you see the paper that way, you can see the face above it differently too. The commuter face is often mistaken for blankness. You know the one. Eyes not quite focused, mouth settled into neutrality. Expression arranged so that nothing in it can be taken as an invitation. It can look bored, cold, or vaguely absent, but it is not nothing, it is a skill. In a packed carriage, strangers have to acknowledge one another just enough to keep the system working. You make space for a person to pass. You move your bag. You shift your elbow. You register the body next to you as real, inconvenient, and worthy of a basic level of care. But you do not fully invite them in. You do not stare. You do not examine. You do not let every accidental contact become an event, so people looked at the floor. At the window, even when the window offered nothing useful. At the advertisements above the seats. At the line where the carriage wall met the ceiling. At the newspaper, blessedly available, with its columns and edges and permission to disappear into print. Tightly packed strangers avoiding each other's eyes can look like indifference. It can look, from a distance, as if the city has made everyone colder. But up close, it is more delicate than that. It is a shared agreement not to demand too much from one another under conditions nobody chose. You do not need a theory name for it. The carriage teaches it by repetition. Morning after morning, stop after stop, people learn how to be near without becoming intimate, how to be polite without becoming open, how to grant privacy when no actual private space exists. Today's earphones and phones sit inside the same long problem. They are not proof that modern people have fallen away from some golden age of public connection. The older carriage was already full of people protecting themselves from one another with paper, posture, hats, silence, and carefully managed eyes. We did not invent the need for a private edge. We just changed the tools. And those tools matter because the commute itself is not only a route, it is a strange piece of time held between two versions of your life. This may be the part of commuting that is easiest to overlook because it has become so ordinary. The time between home and work does not fully belong to either place. At home, you may still be the person who made coffee badly, looked for keys, answered a message too quickly, left a cup in the sink. At work, you will be someone else, or at least a slightly rearranged version of yourself. Competent, available, named by a role, expected at a desk or a counter or a meeting. The commute sits between those two lives. It is not leisure exactly. You are not free in the way you are free on a walk you chose. But it is not work either. Not quite. Even if work is the reason the journey exists. It is a daily transition ritual that often refuses to announce itself as one. No candles, no ceremony, no threshold marked by a bell. Just a platform, a ticket, a strap, a clock, a newspaper, a face arranged for public use. For many people, modern commuting created a kind of time that was not quite owned by the home and not quite owned by the office. You were moving, but you were also being moved from one state into another. You left a domestic self behind by degrees. You assembled a public self by degrees. The train did not simply cover distance. It gave that change a place to happen. And it taught a set of small, repeated lessons. How to wait with strangers. How to stand close without turning closeness into intimacy. How to protect a private space using whatever object was available. How to let the day divide itself into before and after. We often think of commuting as empty time because it is time on the way to something else. But the older carriage makes the emptiness look more active. The waiting was doing something. The standing was doing something. The blank face was doing something. Even the newspaper, folded into its careful little wall, was doing something. You were not only going to work, you were passing through the narrow place where one part of the day became another. Which brings us back to the platform, and to the small glowing object in your hand. Now the phone returns. The screen lights under your thumb. The app says the train is a few minutes away. Your earphones settle the station into something softer, or replace it altogether with a voice you chose. A delay alert appears, and even if it annoys you, it also tells you what kind of annoyance this will be. Manageable, perhaps. Reroutable. Worth a message, not yet a disaster. There is no need to turn this into a moral about modern life. The phone is not a failure of attention. The earphones are not proof that everyone has withdrawn from the world. The app is not a cheap substitute for some richer, older form of presence. They are tools, and like the newspaper, the hat brim, the lowered gaze, the hand on the strap, they help make public exposure bearable. They give you a boundary in a place that cannot give you much space. Around you, other people are doing the same thing in their own small ways. One person looks at a screen. One looks down the track. One stands perfectly still, listening to something you cannot hear. Someone shifts a bag against their knee. The station holds all these private interiors for a few minutes before the doors open and everyone becomes a crowd again. The commute is still a threshold. It is just wrapped now in newer materials: glass, plastic, signal, battery, chosen sound. You stand on the platform, phone in hand, earphones in, the train still not quite here. The day has not fully begun, and already you are crossing it.